Hey guys, this is Eric Vasquez here for Design Cuts, and today we're going to be creating a cover for a children's book. So let's jump right into it. Here I've opened up Photoshop and I'm just creating a new document that is going to be 6 inches wide by 9 inches tall with a resolution of 300 dpi or pixels per inch. And for now, let's just leave it in RGB color mode, background content set to black, and I'm just going to go ahead and give this a title here. We're going to call it Mrs. Fox in the Garden, and then go ahead and hit create. And the first thing I want to do here is just double click this background layer to unlock it, and I'm just going to go ahead and type in background in all caps like that. And from here what I want to do is come over to my Finder, and you guys will be able to grab these from your freebie resources for this tutorial, and go ahead and navigate to the delightfully subtle texture. Open it up in Photoshop, and then all we're going to do is just drag this over into our main document. And I'm just going to name this layer the same thing as the actual texture. Paste that in there, and then hold down the Control key, click on the layer, and choose Convert to Smart Object. Now I like to do this anytime that I'm bringing in new layers and new objects to work with in Photoshop, because it basically ensures that I can resize things, play around with the scale, and that I won't lose any quality in the image. So I like to do that. It's also a great non-destructive way to work when you're applying filters and certain effects, because you can go back and adjust the parameters. So now that we've dropped this texture in here, we're actually going to go back to that folder and open up our next texture. So let me just first click to copy the name, and then I'm going to open it in Photoshop here and do the same thing. I'm just going to drag this into my document, hold down the Control key, convert it to a smart object, and then let's just go ahead and paste in a name that matches the same name as our texture. Okay? And the next thing we're going to do is come up here to where it says normal, and let's just change the blending mode of that layer. Let's just change that so that it's set to screen. Now it's kind of a subtle effect because you're not really going to be able to see these green hues and colors that well on top of the white, but once we start adding more layers, it will add a nice subtle effect. What we want to do from here is come all the way down to the bottom of the layers palette and click on this circle here that looks like a half black and half white circle. And then we're going to come up here to where it says solid color. And for the values for this color, let's type in F37021, which is this kind of nice vibrant orange color. And then go ahead and hit OK. And now for this layer, let's change the blending mode to linear light. Okay, so that's going to create this kind of nice yellowish color. And you'll see now when you turn on and off some of these other textures that it does have a bit of an effect on the appearance of the background layer. Okay, so now we've got a few layers in here. The next thing we want to bring in is our small dot pattern. Now these are just a little sample of the larger bundle that you guys can gain access to here this month through Design Cuts. And there's a ton of great resources in here. I mean, it took me a while to decide on which things to use for this tutorial, as it usually does, because there's just so much stuff in here to use in any of your projects. So once you bring the dots in here, the first thing that I'm going to do is press Command or Control if you're on a PC plus J on the keyboard, and then press Command and the left bracket to move this layer below the original copy. Then what I'm going to do is press Command or Control plus T to do a free transform, hold down the Shift key, and just slide this copy down below the original. Now I might tap it up or down a little bit just to get the spacing to be even. And then I'm going to select both of these layers while holding the Shift key and press Command plus J once again, and then Command and the left bracket twice to move those copies down. And then from there I'll do the same thing, press Command T to do a free transform, and then just hold the Shift key and drag both of these copies down below the original two copies. Now by doing this we can begin to kind of fill up the space a little bit. So once you have a few copies like this, I'm going to click on the first one, hold Shift and click on the last copy, and then press Command or Control plus E on the keyboard to merge them together. Now I'm going to repeat this by making more copies and sliding them around below or next to the originals until we basically fill up our entire canvas with this dot pattern. Okay, so I'm just creating more copies, merging them, and moving them either next to or below the previous copies. You guys can kind of see what I'm doing as I work here, and you don't have to fill up the entire canvas because we're actually going to be scaling this up a little bit pretty soon. So maybe just this last copy should do it. Okay, select both over here while holding Shift and press Command or Control plus E. And now what I'm going to do is hold down the Control key and convert this layer into a smart object. And I'm just going to call it small dot pattern. Zoom out a little bit and press Command or Control plus T on the keyboard. And now I'm just going to scale these up so the dots are quite a bit larger. And I'm holding the Alt, Option, and Shift keys to scale this up from the center here. One other thing that we want to look at is rotating this. So if I hover my cursor over the right side here, you'll see that it kind of changes into this curved shape. So while I have that, hold the Shift key and then just begin to rotate the dots until they're about 45 degrees like that. Okay, and maybe we can even go a little bit larger with them by zooming out, pressing Command or Control plus T, and then dragging outwards from any of the four corners while holding the Alt, Option, and Shift keys. Okay, and you should end up with something roughly like that. There's a few spots here where the dots aren't perfectly matched up, but that's okay. And from here, what we're going to do is double click on this layer to bring up our layer styles, and we're going to add a color overlay. Now for this color, let's go ahead down here where the hexadecimal value is, and we'll type in 5D3217, hit OK again, and then press the number 2 on the keyboard just to lower the opacity. So you now have this kind of low opacity small dot pattern covering all of your canvas or your workspace. From here, what we can do is select the small dot pattern, hold the Shift key and select the background layer, and then press Command or Control plus G on the keyboard to create a new group folder. And I'm just going to call this entire folder background. Now instead of using that keyboard shortcut, you could also come down here and select this little folder icon at the bottom of the layers palette. And that's going to do the exact same thing. Let's come back to our folder here with our freebies. And the next thing that I'm going to be looking for here is the Olive Meadow frame. Now there's a lot of really great floral elements and watercolor assets in this bundle. So for now, let's just go ahead and drag this over really quick. Hold down Control and convert this to a smart object. And let's also go ahead and paste in the name here. Right, so I'm just copying and pasting the name and then pressing Command and T on the keyboard to do a free transform. Now what I want to do is just slide this over so that it's only on the right side of the image. So you're seeing the left side of the frame on the right side of the image like this. Okay, and you can move it up a little bit. Press Command or Control plus J to create a copy, and then Command in the left bracket to move it below the original. Press Command T again to do another free transform, and just hold the Shift key and slide this down. Now we want a little bit of variation here. We don't want to see an exact duplicate of the top of our frame, so hold down the Control key and click on this image down here on the bottom, and then let's choose Flip Horizontal. And now what that's going to do is give us, show us the opposite side basically, so it gives us a little bit more variation there. Okay, and then once you're happy with it, hold the Shift key and select both layers and press Command J to create a copy. Now I'm going to press Command in the left bracket twice just to move these two copies below our original two. Press Command T to do a free transform, and then hold the Shift key and slide these over to the opposite side. Okay, somewhere about there. And if you want to, you can move these around a little bit more, play around with the positioning of them until you get something that you're happy with. Okay, and from here, let's go ahead and select our bottom copy, press Command J, move it down below the other layer by pressing Command in the left bracket. And now we're just going to move this so it's all the way on the bottom here, and we're only seeing the top of the frame. So then I'll create another copy, do a free transform, hold Shift and slide it over, press the Control key and click on the image, and then choose Flip Vertical. Now this time we're just going to get a little bit more variation that way. Instead of flipping it horizontally, we're just going to flip it vertically. Okay, and then we can move this copy over a little bit too, just to spread out some of these flowers and flora. Now we're basically just going to repeat that one more time by selecting both copies, pressing Command J to duplicate them, Command in the left bracket twice to move them down, and then Command and T to do a free transform before holding the Shift key and sliding both copies up simultaneously. Now you guys kind of get the idea here and you see how I'm doing this, but once you have placed all of your floral elements here, you can move them around or flip them or do anything else that you want to create some variation. But basically you want to end up with having all four sides look like there's plants and flowers coming in. Once you're happy with that, select your bottom or your top copy of the frame, hold the Shift key and select the last copy, and then come down here and click on this folder icon to put them into a group folder, which we can then double click on and rename Frame. I'm going to return back to the freebie folder and come over here and grab the Fox PNG. Now this is a fox that I created using Lisa Gland's Cute Critter Creator, which is an awesome resource full of all of these accessories and very customizable and fun to use. So this is a fox that I created for the purposes of this tutorial. Now I'm just going to double click in this layer and just call this layer Mrs. Fox. Hold down the Control key, click on the layer and convert it to a smart object. And then once I've done that, press Command T to do a free transform. Hold Shift and just slide it down a little bit so that you can see the outer edges. And then I'm going to hold down Alt, Option, and Shift and just scale this down so that you can see the entire fox here, and just try to place it roughly in the center on the lower portion of the design before pressing the Return or Enter key to apply the changes. Now once you've placed Mrs. Fox here in the document and you're happy with the size and everything, go ahead and double click on the layer to bring up the Layer Style dialog box and check off this option here on the bottom that says Drop Shadow. Now for the settings, you can leave the blend mode set to normal and use a solid black color. And for the opacity, we're actually going to type in a value of 15%. Where it says the angle here, let's go ahead and enter a value of about 129. And we'll just change the distance to about 24 pixels or so. Okay, and if I just move that dialog box over, you can kind of see what that looks like, and then go ahead and hit OK to apply the changes. And from here, we're just going to press Command and G to put this into a group folder named Mrs. Fox. Now that we've got our background, our frame, and our main character here, we can begin looking at adding some text. So I'm going to create a new layer, press D on the keyboard to get my default colors over here at the bottom of the toolbar, and then I'll just click on this arrow to make sure that white is my foreground color. Now I'll press T on the keyboard to get my text tool, and just click on the canvas and type in the words in the. Just like that, and then I'm going to click inside here and press Command A to select all of the text. Come up here to the character panel, or you can access it by going to Window, Character. And let's just go ahead and change the typeface here to Children of the Starlight. Now this is a free font that you guys can download off defont.com. It's a cool little font. It's got this nice kind of handwritten, playful quality to it, which I really liked, especially for something like this. Now for the size, I'm going to make it 66.61 points. Okay, so just make sure that you click inside here first to highlight your text. Come over here where it says the size, and let's just type in 66.61 and hit Enter. And then let's just move that over here in the center. And now we can go ahead and create another new layer, grab our text tool again, and now we'll type out the word garden. Now for this, we do want to use the same font, but we actually want to increase the size of the font so that it's a bit larger. So let's make it about 172 point. And now what we can do is grab our Move tool, and we can just position this so that the words in the are kind of framed in between the ascender of the D and the top of the G like this. Alright, and that just creates this nice kind of lockup here for us. Now, I'm just going to reorder these layers for a second, so in the is on top because that just makes a little more sense to me. And then I'll hold the Shift key and select both of these layers together, press Command G, and then rename it TT for title treatment. Now what we want to do from here is go ahead and expand our Mrs. Fox group folder, and you'll notice that there's a little symbol here that just looks like a small FX, but if I hold down the Control key and click on it, I'll have an option to copy the layer style. So go ahead and choose that so that we can copy the drop shadow, and now we'll select our title treatment group folder, hold down the Control key once again, and this time we'll choose Paste Layer Style. Now we don't want it to be quite as far away because we want it to look a little bit closer to our type. So let's just go ahead and double click on it so that we can modify that setting. So once I have my Layer Style dialog box open, come back down here to the drop shadow, and we're just going to change the distance from 24 pixels to about 14 pixels so that the shadow is a little bit closer to our text, and then go ahead and click on OK. Now I can press Command T, and I can just kind of center our title treatment here above our character, somewhere around there, and that's looking pretty good. We want to add a little bit more type here, so I might just hold the Shift key and tap this down a few times, add a new layer, press T once again to get my text tool, and now I'll just type in Mrs. Fox in all caps. Now it's hard to see here because it's kind of off the canvas, and we actually want to use a different typeface for this. So I'm going to go ahead and just click 3 times in here with the type tool, and we'll bring up our character panel again by going to Window, Character, and this time let's go ahead and change the name of our font to Goldfather. Now Goldfather is another free font that you guys can download from dafont.com, which just really fits perfectly with this theme, and it looks pretty cool. It's got a little bit of a roughness to it, which almost makes it look like a little bit hand-drawn. So all I'm doing here is pressing Command T to do a free transform, and then holding the Alt, Option, and Shift keys to scale it down from the center. And then I'm going to move it up here so it's above our In the Garden text, and then just click inside here to highlight it. Now for the point size, I want to use about 38.04 or just 38. You can round it off. Alright, and then I'm just going to highlight the text and come up here where you'll see this little icon that looks like a T with a curved line under it. And that is the option to create warped text. So once I open that up, I can choose the style drop down, and I'm going to go ahead and choose arc. Make sure that you have horizontal set, and then for the bend value, let's put in a value of about 14% and then hit OK. Now there's some other cool options in here that you can use to warp your text, but this one is just kind of a nice, playful, subtle curve that looks pretty good with our design. Next, I'll double click on the layer to bring up the layer styles, check off the color overlay option, and then for the fill color, let's go ahead and enter a value of C3602C, which is this kind of darker orange color that matches the tip of the ears here on the fox. Alright, and then just go ahead and hit OK. Press Command G to put this into a group folder, and we're just going to call it Mrs. Fox Text. Okay, so we're looking pretty good so far. We've got our title set in here with some nice arch, with a nice warp effect applied to it. And then we've got our white handwritten typeface below that with a drop shadow that matches or is close to matching the drop shadow that we applied to the fox. The next thing we're going to do is come back to our freebie folder, and now we're going to add some cool kind of symbols and illustrated elements to our design. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is open up number 24 in Photoshop, and I'm just going to drag that over here into my document, close a few of these other tabs if you have others open, and I'm just doing that by pressing Command W to close them. Okay, and then I'll just double click on the layer name here, call it 24, and convert it into a smart object. Now we actually want this cloud to be appearing behind our frame and behind our title text, so we need to reorder our layers a little bit. So I'm just going to hold Command and press the left bracket a few times until this cloud is below my frame layer, like that, and then press Command T on the keyboard and drag inwards from any of the 4 corners while holding the Alt, Option, and Shift keys to scale it down. And I just want to move it somewhere over here to the left of the frame, and then double click on the layer, apply a color overlay, and change the fill color to solid white. All right, so it's a little more cloud-like that way. And then you can just play around with the positioning a little bit more until you find something that you like. Next, we're going to press Command J to duplicate it, and then Command in the left bracket to move that copy below, and then press Command T to initiate a free transform, and hold down the Alt, Option, and Shift keys to scale this down from the center a little bit. Now we want this copy, or this cloud, to be a little bit smaller, and we're going to place it over here above the OX in Mrs. Fox. All right, somewhere about there looks good, and since we just created a copy, we already have our layer style applied. So let's go ahead and open up the next cloud to give it a little more variation. Okay, so this time I'm going to grab 121.png, which is one of the many cool illustrated symbols or shapes that you guys will be able to get in the full bundle. And we're going to do the same thing. I'm just going to move this down, make sure it's behind my frame and my title and everything, double click the layer to just rename it 121, and then convert it into a smart object. Now I don't have to double click and apply a color overlay this time. I can simply click on the FX icon while holding the Alt Option key and just drag it from one to the other. And I'll apply the same exact effect. Alright, now do a free transform by pressing Command or Control plus T. Drag inwards from any of the 4 corners while holding Alt, Option, and Shift. And now I'm just going to move this kind of over here towards the right side of the frame, somewhere about there. And then let's just go ahead and create one more copy by pressing Command J, Command in the left bracket to move it down. And I think I'm going to place this copy up here above the misses and just make it a little bit smaller, like that. And now we have one more element that we want to add to this. So let's go back to our freebie folder and let's open up 72.png in Photoshop. Drag it into our document like we've been doing. You guys should be pretty good at this by now. And then we'll convert it to a smart object and rename the layer 72. Now again, do a free transform, scale it down while holding Alt, Option, and Shift, and let's just play around with the positioning of these birds a little bit. Okay, I want them to be kind of small and maybe just overlap some of these clouds. Double click on the layer to open up the layer styles, and now click the color overlay box, and this time let's go ahead and sample some of the background yellow here. Alright, so it looks like it's kind of knocked out of the clouds, and then hit OK. Alright, and now you can play around with the position of the clouds, of the birds, or any of these other elements in here that you guys want to play with. Right, until you kind of find a place and a size for all of these things that you're happy with. Maybe somewhere around there looks pretty good. And now I'll select this first layer here, which is my flock of birds. Hold down the Shift key and choose 121 copy. Press Command G to put it into a group folder. And I'm just going to call this Vector Shapes. And that's about it, guys. That sums up our design tutorial for creating this Mrs. Fox in the Garden children's book cover. I hope that you guys enjoyed the tutorial, and be sure to check out the full bundle for all of these great resources that are sure to breathe new life into your design projects. Thank you guys so much for following along, and I can't wait to see what you guys make with this bundle in your own work. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.